And on the back of that, let me get an immediate reaction from my guests who are here in studio. I think it's the first time I've had the both of them here in their new capacity. Okay, not new, but I think you understand what I mean. Let me introduce them on my immediate right here. We have Kimani Ichung'wah, Majority Leader in the National Assembly, also Kikuyu MP. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Higa.
And on my far right there, we have Opiyo Wandayi, Minority Leader in the National Assembly, and Ugunja, Member of Parliament. Welcome to the program as well.
Thank you, Wahiga.
And let me get an immediate reaction from you, Opiyo, before I hear from Kimani on the story that we've just watched, done there by Francis Gashuri. And we've even gotten a reaction from the Federation of Kenyan Employers who, you know, it's about 6 points, which I can't read right now, but they say that employers still hold the view that a pension scheme is employer-employee benefit, and therefore the court has a jurisdiction to determine the issues arising out of it. But number 4 of this press briefing is that, or press release is that a 6% deduction affected on an employer's pensionable earnings is a huge amount of statutory deduction if implemented on an employee's total earnings. So I think their proposal is to see whether it would be done in a gradual manner as opposed to immediately. Let me get your immediate thoughts on that, Honorable Wandayi.
You know, Wahiga, from my experience as chair of the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly for the last 5 years or so in the last parliament, has made me to be a pessimist. Whereas the initiative might sound noble, I perceive this move as a case of putting the cart before the horse.
In what way?
In the sense that we have serious systemic issues to address in the NSSF itself, okay? Because historically, the NSSF has been treated as a cash cow for the ruling political class. So before you assure us that you have addressed the issues, the systemic issues that bedevil the NSSF, okay, you cannot rush to start making these arbitrary increments in the contributions. And the increments might look small, but to the common person, the common wage earner down there, who is, for instance, earning 15,000 shillings, and is now required to contribute 900 shillings from that money, that salary, which was already committed, as you may know, okay, is a huge cost to a fund whose management has never been up to date.
Okay.
To a fund which makes it extremely difficult for the contributors to access those contributions at the end of the day. So we need to address the issues first that bedevil the NSSF before we can talk about these increments. However noble they might appear to be.
And I get a sense that you have for you, saving is good. That's not the problem. The problem is the oversight of the fund. And I want Kimani to also jump in on this. And Honorable Wandayi has raised several issues. How quickly Kenyans can access mature funds, accountability, transparency. I want you to speak to those, even as this proposal moves to the next.
Thank you, Higa, and I agree to a large extent with some of the issues that Honorable Opiyo Wandayi is raising in terms of the governance structure within NSSF over the past. And I'm glad that he recognizes that that was in the past, and even his experience from PAC are things that happened in the past, not really very current issues, because the issues that emerge out of audit questions that emanate from the audits of the Auditor General. And therefore, we cannot sit as a country and pretend that there hasn't been any problems with NSSF. And you remember right from the old Kano days, the issues that were there with Eurobank and all the other there was another bank, I can't remember the name of that bank. One that used to operate somewhere within Nakumat. I don't recall the name. But you remember all those issues and how contributors' money were being invested in entities that were not very stable. And there were interventions then, and even today there have been interventions to make sure that we continuously address the governance issues within the fund, not just NSSF, even NHIF and all other government funds. And part of those things are things that have been done in Parliament, for instance, limiting the kind of investments that the fund can invest in. You remember in the old Kanu days, they would buy land that was valueless and keep it at the expense of contributors. Today, it's not possible to do that. And therefore, there have been improvements, and therefore, we cannot then become slaves of our own past. We must, as leaders, take a position where then we look at where are we coming from and where should we be going. And I'm glad my brother here agrees that indeed savings is a good thing for any country, and even for people as individuals. And as a nation, we cannot invest anywhere and in anything unless we have a savings culture. And I think we are the only country in the region that was contributing 200 shillings. Off the cuff, we're just commenting with my brother here. Probably it's even more expensive to manage the 200 shillings. It costs NSSF more money to administer the 200 shillings that people are contributing between yourself and your employer, 200 shillings, than it would cost them. And that's why I think even the president from that clip you played there, he's saying, would rather just stop contributing and stop saving as a country. But again, it would be very responsible to say that we stop contributing. And therefore, that's why I want to agree. And I'm happy that when we enacted this law way back in 2014, myself and Opiyo Wandayi were in Parliament, and we enacted this law on the basis that as a country we were coming from a situation where it was no longer sustainable to continue saving 200 shillings. I have listened to the issues that employers have raised, quite weighty issues, and there are issues that can be looked into. I remember during debate on that particular bill, there were proposals, I just can't remember exactly whether they were incorporated into the bill. I need to check that. For instance, if you have a private pension fund where both the employer and the employee are contributing, then you deduct part of what you are contributing to NSSF. And so was it also the same recommendations for NHIF, so that if you have a very good pension scheme like the one myself and Opiyo Wandayi enjoy, then if I'm contributing 40,000 shillings to my pension fund today, maybe I can, my employer contributes a similar amount, maybe I can contribute that less than the 2 or 6,000 that is going to NSSF, so that we don't, as leaders, tell our people in a very insightful manner that this is not right. You know, if you do this, your money will get into a ditch.
And maybe
whereas ourselves, our old age is secured. This money is also important, Wahiga, to realize that you are not saving for government, you are saving for yourself. Part of what informed this law, way back in 2014, if you remember, that's around the same time the cash transfer program for the elderly and vulnerable was starting, was the realization that people who retire at 55, some at 60, in a short 3 years, they become delinquent and they have to depend on other people. Whereas if there was a proper savings scheme in the country, those people can be very well taken care of in their old age.
And that's why I want to interrupt you, and just to hear from the both of you, even as the House resumes next week, which then comes first? Do we immediately begin to implement? And of course, it's the law, so I'm sure unless someone moves to a different court, to a higher court, to challenge it, then the next point is implementation. Which comes first? The guarantee that the funds will be ring-fenced, protected, transparency and accountability, or the collecting of the new system of funds? And Opiyo, you want to jump in on that?
Yes, and this is something I have pronounced myself on before. And in fact, if you went to the Hansard records in Parliament, you will actually see my contribution to the bill then, hopefully. We must address the issues first that make it difficult for this fund to be managed prudently for the benefit of the contributor, okay? Unless we address that issue and head on, really.
What are you going to do about it?
That's what I'm saying.
You sit in a better place than a majority of Kenyans.
And I won't be surprised, again, Wahiga, if this matter proceeds to the next court, which is the Supreme Court, okay? We shouldn't be seen to be in a hurry. Parliament might have passed it, of course. Parliament in its wisdom might have passed the law, okay? But we must still go back and ask ourselves, okay? Because this money is going to be huge, huge. And we have seen the appetite of politicians and those who are in power to raid these coffers for political purposes. So I think Kenyans must be really worried. And I agree with the Federation of Kenya Employers and many other people who are voicing concerns. So I strongly believe that however noble the idea is, the intentions are, we still have room, okay? The world is not ending tomorrow. We have room to address these very serious issues that are of concern, not only to the contributors, but to Kenyans generally. Yeah.
Kimani, I know you want to respond to that, but even as you do, I think you took some time yesterday to speak about your agenda as a majority leader when you resume next week. One of the things that's come to, to our newsrooms now is the supplementary budget estimates, and I want to read something here that's of interest to us. We have seen 106 billion Kenya shillings deducted from development spending, a step in the, and some raise questions about the logic behind that, only to reallocate that money, about 92.2 billion of that funds, to recurrent expenditure, meaning the net savings is about 14 billion Kenya shillings. The National Treasury seems to be falling short of actualizing government austerity measures. Talk to us about those numbers, even as you think of your agenda.
I think, Wahiga, even before I get to that, I was just laughing, smiling here when the Honorable Opiyo was conceding that he indeed contributed to the enactment of this law. And now, 10 years down the line, turns around to fight the same law. And I'm sure he appreciates that it is now law, and I hope, it's my prayer that nobody will move to the next court. Because really, we have wasted 10 good years of saving. Someone who was employed then has not saved for those 10 years. We've only saved 200 shillings. We are saving 200 shillings, Wahiga. If you work for 30 years, and probably most people get their jobs, maybe the earliest you could get a job is probably at 25. If you start saving at 25, by the time you retire at 60, at 200 shillings, I think you have saved about 84,000 shillings. Even if the employer contributed a similar amount, it's 168,000 shillings. Tell me which Kenyan will survive on 168,000 shillings, plus a little bit of interest, that premium that you have earned from interest over the years, how long you survive for. And that's what I was telling you. 3 years after retirement, people become delinquent and they have to depend on others. And therefore, the cycle of dependence and poverty in this country will never end. I don't need to re-emphasize the need for savings because we all agree there's something good in saving.
That's right.
The question on whether we start with fixing the issues at NSSF and other funds first or implementing the law as it is, I would say we implement the law as it is as we deal with the governance issues as they were. And I've given you a case study of where the NSSF used to invest in land, in bogus banks here and there. It's no longer there today. And therefore, we have a responsibility, myself and my brother here, Wandayi, to make sure from the National Assembly, because we are charged with that responsibility constitutionally to oversight these funds, to ensure that we do meaningful oversight, such that none of the managing trustees or anybody managing such funds will waste those funds. Otherwise, it's pretensions of me to come and say, oh, you know, this will be a lot of money. Kenyans are paying much more money than the contribution they will make. You are paying much more in taxes. If you are not worried about the payers you earn, that you contribute, and with no guarantees again that that money will be used well. You pay with the faith. you pay with the faith that that money will be used and must be used correctly to offer public services and goods to the people. Back to the supplementary budget.
And I'll give you 30. We are due for a break, so just briefly talk about it, and then we'll come back and read it.
I was just going to say, you know, the document came on Thursday. We are here to go through it. It's a proposal from the National Treasury. There is always a case for reducing both recurrent and a little bit of development expenditure. I'll tell you, the rationale behind reducing development expenditure is what you're not able to consume within the financial year. And you also find at times, and I'll tell you this from experience as chair budget, at times you find sectors that if you put in recurrent expenditure will help spur a lot of economic activity in the country, and maybe they weren't adequately financed. So until we get into the numbers and get to see where is it that you're removing development expenditure, and that is the work of Parliament. Now that is what committees are doing today. They will be checking if you are reducing development expenditure in this sector, is it money that could actually have been utilized between now and June? If you are moving it to recurrent expenditure in this, in an area where then it may not be consumed, or in an area that it will not spur in economic activity and development, then Parliament has a leeway to reverse that. And that's why I said it's just a proposal that comes from the National Treasury, the parliamentary committees, all departmental committees and the Budget and Appropriations Committee. In the next 1.5 to 2 weeks, we'll be looking at those things. And
I have so many...
Doing justice.
I'm told I really do need to take that break. Do you have, is a brief comment?
Yes, certainly. I must comment on this. Surely, I haven't had time to look at those estimates. Yeah, because they just came the other day.
On Friday.
I'm hoping to look at them from Monday. But I will be keen to establish from those estimates if indeed the promise by the regime okay, that they will be reducing the budget by 300 billion.
And that was going to be my next question.
It's going to come to fruition. I'll be very keen, because when this idea was raised, I mean, was brought up, I had seriously raised my misgivings, because I advised then that the surest way to deal with this issue of reducing the budget is to deal with the corruption and the leakages, the wastages, okay? Unless you have got a proper, watertight plan to deal with the pilferage, okay, yeah, you will be basically indulging in an exercise in futility. So I'll be very keen to see what is in that those estimates, and more critically is the sector of education. Yeah, okay. Because as we speak, people are suffering at the grassroots.
And we will be back for
problems
that. We've seen the estimates on education, and I'll come back and update our viewers on those numbers. Yes. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll dig deeper into this. There's a lot to talk about on this supplementary budget matter, and we'll also talk a bit of politics as well with these two gentlemen here in studio. Opiyo Wandayi, Minority Leader in the National Assembly, still here with us. Kimani Ichung'wah, Majority Leader in the National Assembly as well. 22422 is our SMS line. #Newsnight. Let's jump straight into that break. We'll be right back with so much more.